Alright. Well, hello. I am setting out to create a video about Red Rune-keeper in Lord of the Rings Online that has all of the content that I was looking for when I returned to this game. I took a long break and came back. There was a lot of changes, and there was not a lot of useful videos, at least useful to me, in terms of rotation, in terms of skill choice, all of that kind of stuff. I have since kind of got back into the game and posted a couple of videos that several people have commented on and asking for more of an explanation as to how my rotation works. So this video is supposed to address that, but also just all of my thoughts on Red RK. All the things that I wish I knew. So hopefully this is gonna, be somewhat helpful for anybody who has been away from the game for a while coming back. If you're a new player and you're just like, I want to be good, or even you've been playing RK for a while, but maybe you haven't touched, the 180s, 190k DPS, and you're like, how can you possibly hit over 200k with the instant set? And you'd like to know how to do that. Um, all of those things, and then getting into the nitty-gritty details, like the super nerdy stuff. Um, I'm going to try to cover all of that. I tend to ramble, so hopefully I can do this in a way that's not just impossible to follow. I have created my spreadsheet with sort of a skeleton outline of talking points so that I can hopefully keep my thoughts somewhat coherent. So first I want to talk about, I have listed here history. So if you're a returning player like me, so many things have changed. Um, or rather, some key things have changed, I should probably say. Way back in the day, and we're talking, so when I last played, I played at level 65. Like, 65 was level cap all the way through about 105, and then I mostly stopped playing the game. So it's been like a decade, right? I came back to the game in March-ish of 2026, and we're now in August. So, way back in the day, you didn't have as many trait points as you do now, and you could not go as deep into lightning. So that was one thing. Two, fiery ridicule used to be an induction. So the way you approached Redline RK was completely different. You would, like, most of your time was spent inducting fiery ridicule, kind of mixed in with everything else. You weren't really weaving in lightning skills, and fire has been indirectly nerfed slightly since several changes. Before we had a legacy that was just raw fire damage that we no longer have, so that's kind of a bump down. And lightning has been buffed considerably since I last played. It used to be our rotations were built around tearing up writs of fire very slowly in order to proc more and more searing words, because there's a different version for each tier of writ of fire, or at least there used to be. So you would try to overlap these, right? You would do like 3 or 4 fire skills, then your first writ, then 3 or 4 fire skills, then your next writ, kind of thing, and just try to slowly hit those in the hopes that in a long burn you'd stack them. That's not really how we're approaching trying to milk DPS anymore. Um, Now, what has changed is fire ridicule. So to compare, right? Back in the day, I don't know if I can do an H pop up with that. Let me see here. Back in the day, uh, lightning had abysmal base damage, to where if you looked at the tooltip for Ceaseless Argument, the damage on that would be like dramatically lower than fiery ridicule. But lightning had just absurd amounts of crit multipliers. So if you crit, the damage was okay. The damage was good. But if you didn't crit, it was like a red guard was out DPSing you. Like, it was bad. If you missed some of your key, like 5 of your bigger lightning skills in a row not critting, and you're just in a DPS deficit, you could never make up. So people only really did lightning in Moors or for funsies, stacking things so they could get one giant epic conclusion hit or something like that. Fire was just the more consistent, steady, big volume damage output. So now, times have changed. Now, lightning's base damage has been buffed considerably. Fire's base damage has been nerfed a bit. Um, And let's see, what are my notes here? Oh, and then the other big change is Smoldering Wrath now consumes Writ of Fire. So instead of trying to stack up your writ slowly, right, because once you get to tier 3, you're not going to just not hit Writ of Fire back in the day. So that's why you're trying to tear them up slowly to get these Searing Words procs to go. Now, Smoldering Wrath takes it all the way off. So you're actually spamming a lot more like Writs of Fire in there. And yeah, I think that's probably all the history that I was planning to cover. So now let's go into traits. These that I have selected here are your must-have lightning traits. Now hear me. You must, if you want to do competitive DPS at level 160 right now, we're in August 12th, 2026, you must utilize Lightning Line, or you will not be, you can't hang with the top DPS, essentially. So here are the lightning traits. For those of you who maybe are like, you just leveled a Rune-keeper and you don't know, if there's any of you guys watching, anybody who's a pro obviously knows all this anyway, but these 3 in this column, combined with Epic Conclusion, are basically the huge, like, chance thing that you're having to deal with on Rune-keeper to milk damage. So you have 2 base lightning buffs, okay, that then combine into this other lightning buff that is then consumed by Epic Conclusion to give you Aftershock. What does all that mean? Okay, so you got Thunderous Words, which is a buff that you get that gives you 20% crit chance on lightning skills only, which is not bad, but it's nowhere near as good as the other one, Harsh Debate, which is a 15% damage buff. If you're new to this game, like you're like really new and you don't understand how all of this stuff works, your mastery rating gets you up to 200% outgoing, like basically tactical damage, right? Every other free percentages stack on top of that. The cap is 200% from rating. So this 15%, just like the veteran strength 5% or your armor set bonus or whatever, stacks on top of that 200%. So this is a must. This is a this is a decent bump in your damage, right? Then you have closing remarks. So the second you get both of these up, if you've taken this trait, they combine into closing remarks. Now you'll notice all 3 of these, well, this one doesn't say it, all 3 of these are 20 seconds duration, which is kind of nice that it combines, because you could have Harsh Debate, right? You have your 15% tactical damage buff, and you've been trying to get your Thunderous Words proc up, and you have 3 seconds left, and you finally get it. Well, now you get both of them for the full 20 seconds again. So this is actually a really nice mechanic that they combine, and the duration is now reset at 20 seconds. So you'll notice this is basically just these 2 combined, plus now it does stuff for Epic Conclusion. Now, I'm not going to read this real quick. I can't remember if it actually says it in the description, but basically Epic Conclusion now does a bunch more damage, plus 40%. And I'm pretty sure, I maybe read it on the wiki, but I'm pretty sure it's also another 40% critical hit chance. Because I have never, in all of the parses that I have done, seen an Epic Conclusion not crit or devastate. Okay? So if I'm right, if it is 40%, it's like you get the 25% from being at crit cap. You get the other 5% for being at, just from the lightning line. So you're at 30, another 40, so that's 70%. Then you're getting, what is it, lightning? You got single target crit chance, you've got lightning crit chance, and then, this just free 20% crit chance. You're basically like almost at 100%. There's an abysmally small percent chance to not crit or devastate, right? So, in our rotation, we are always going to be hitting Epic Conclusion with Closing Remarks buff up. The other thing it does is it says in here it reduces the cooldown. What that means is actually this 30-second cooldown, right? Let me get rid of this one. This 30-second cooldown is cut in half to 15 seconds. That is actually huge. So that's closing remarks. This lasts 20 seconds. Once you hit epic conclusion, this goes away and is replaced by aftershock, which is the exact same buff, except not the epic conclusion combo. You're not going to be able to hit EC in time because it only lasts 10 seconds, with each of the previous buffs plus 5%. So now Thunderous Words equivalent, right? Like, so now we're at 25% lightning skills crit chance and plus 20% damage. That is a 10-second window that we are then trying to maximize our damage output within. Like, hit all of our big dots and like all of the big stuff, right? So that's the general concept. Let me reconsult my thing here. So basic trait setup. This is a must-have for lightning, okay? In fire, there's a couple of different things you can do. You basically want 1 point into will. That's the biggest bang for your buck. It's going to cost 2 trait points, but you get like over 4,000 will. Beyond that, becomes a lot less worth it. It's like a lot less efficient on trait points. This is not what you should run in an actual thing for any actual content, okay? You're always going to want Molten Flame. I don't have Molten Flame here because it does not impact your dummy parse. I take all of the will so that I don't have to have as many buffs active to hit my caps, just to test my rotations and see, you know, how things are working. But you're always going to want to take Molten Flame maxed out. That's a 15% armor rend. That is quite unique. I don't know how many other classes actually contribute that, if there's any. So you're definitely going to want that. Now the must-haves are the tactical damage, the stacking fire damage buff. Getting the rune stone, whether you max it out or not, is a must. You're going to want scathing mockery, like all of this stuff down here, right? Mystifying flame, all of this, and then this one. Everything else is sort of personal preference. Now, for those of you who have watched the video that I put up where I was like, easy rotation, there was 0 sound, and I got 197,500 DPS, right? On that rotation, I did not have Essence of Flame. I will talk more about that and how my perspective has changed a bit once we get to the rotation part. So keep all that in mind. You must utilize lightning in today's meta. Prove me wrong. Like, if you can prove me wrong and there's a rotation where you can do over 200,000 damage just sitting in Fireline, I would love to know that, because that would be great. Alright, so let's look at my LIs. So, of all of these traceries, the only ones that are sort of open for you to put something else in, right, are if you are running a build without Essence of Flame, you can drop Essence of Flame. I did that for a while. I mean, I didn't have Essence of Flame when I got 197.5, okay? I have changed that rotation a bit to what you're seeing here, and I did, I think it was 211,000 one time. Like, it was a pretty lucky one, but it was possible, right? Again, if you don't have Essence of Flame, you can still get decent damage. I'll just talk about it right now. The argument for that, in my brain, was it's 4 trait points and a tracery that you can free up for other utility. I do think you do more damage with it, but it's not the craziest thing to kind of forego that. The other thing is this Distracting Flame cooldown and damage. You don't actually need this. I have it because there's basically 4 options that can go in here. You can either do Runestone damage, which is what I think the vast majority of arcades do. You could do Self-Motivation. I'm just reading it off my spreadsheet here. Self-Motivation, Cooldown, and Power Restore, which is, I believe, Morale Restore once you have that trait. Just this one trait up here that transforms it into a heal. You could do the Chill of Winter debuff duration and critical vulnerability, or you could do the one I have, Distracting Flame, Cooldown, and damage. Now, the reason I do this, and I might change my mind, you know, there's pros and cons. Those are the 4 that you pretty much, you're going to decide what you want to put in here. Everything else is pretty standard. The reason I do it is the main other one people do is Runestone healing and damage, and unfortunately, nothing buffs that. right? Like, it's not you. You put this guy out here, and it's friggin' Kevin. Kevin's a separate dude doing damage. So all of the buffs on you, Kevin does not take advantage of, right? He's just some guy. So, unfortunately, in a raid, if you look at your breakdown of damage on combat analysis, you're very likely going to see, even without the tracery for distracting flame, um, you're going to see that it actually out-damages Runestone, single target, because it can take advantage of buffs, right? It's you. The argument for Runestone is, of course, it's an AoE, right? RK is weird. We have these two skills. We have the Volcanic Runestone, and we have Combustion, which are honestly two of our most powerful AoE skills. Neither of them are AoE skills. And what I mean by that is the Tracery AoE damage, they don't have targets listed, so they don't take advantage of that Tracery, which is very unfortunate. If it did, I would run it. I would run it instead of my skill induction, right? But it doesn't. Combustion is technically a single target skill, which is just frustrating, but regardless. I mean, this says enemies within 5 meters. Maybe I need to test it further. I guess this part is single target. I only tested it on a dummy. Actually, that probably warrants further testing to see if having AoE Legacy makes this do more damage. But anyway, mostly your single target, right? Okay. The only other thing, and I have not tested this, I've seen some people say stuff that they have better results, is instead of Ascendant Lightning, for the 15% lightning damage buff that this pair of Words of Craft gives you, you could go with the crit ones, Heroic Precision. I think Ascendant Lightning is going to be quite a bit ahead, but Lightning does about 15%, or like somewhere between like 27 and 30% of your total damage output with the rotation that I was using. So, you know, it's hard to really do the math and capture that. You'd probably have to just try both versions. Now, obviously, I haven't done it yet, but eventually I'm hoping to grind the featured instance and get Heraldries of the Blazing Eagle. I will drop my Ascendant Flame for 2 Heroic Precisions, okay? Then I'll not have to worry about that. I'll just have everything. I will talk more about this when I get to the actual rotation. Let me keep moving on. Okay, stats. In current game balance, we don't have the ability to cap everything easily. So unfortunately, you can't stack mitts. You're going to be a stain on the wall when you get hit wrong, okay? That's just the reality. You should not have a single essence that is giving you mitigation in current balance if you want to do top DPS or like competitive DPS. So my mitts are absolute trash, right? I'm trying to cap my tactical mastery, my critical, and then the question is, how much finesse do you need? I see a lot of players asking this question. Now right now you'll see I have this Tome of Finesse. I factor this into my build. You basically, in my opinion, want to aim for about 30% here, okay? Now, mine says 25%. I run the traceries that give this 5% resist chance. Some people argue against this. My question is, what else are you going to use, right? Like, you could put in those ones that I said are optional instead of Distracting Flame. You could put Self-Motivation, you could put, like, the Chill of Winter, but then you're required, like, you need way more finesse. So it takes 150,000 rating to get to 30% standing, basically resistance penetration, right? Your BPE and resist to get that to 30%. If you have the traceries, I don't have the legendary ones, but if you had 5.5, right? Then to get to 30%, you add that 5.5 plus a 24.5%. So the number that would get you to 24.5% is 117,132 rating. So let me do the math for you. Not including the 9,000 plus finesse that comes on each of these, right? Not including those ratings. Just the percent alone, if these were legendary, is worth 32,868 finesse rating from that percentage jump, right? Like, obviously it changes slightly depending on what your difference is, if you can follow what I'm saying, right? Like the percent, how much rating is going to translate to percent is going to change depending on where you are on your total finesse, right? But if you're just looking at that last jump to get to 30%, it's worth like over 32,000 rating. There's really nothing else. After you have the rest of these things locked in, right? Except with the exception of this one that I said is kind of your flex playstyle preference, there's nothing that's even close to that level of value. So what I can do is I can just build for like barely over 100k finesse, which means I have what, 50,000 that I'm not having to get on my gear, and then just pop a finesse scroll and be at my 30%, even without the legendaries. So if you're trying to get to caps, I think that it's going to be way easier to do that, keeping those traceries. So let's talk about virtues. All right, virtues. You're going to have to go 5 offensive virtues. You can't carry fidelity if you're trying to do top DPS. You might swap it out for like tier 3 content where, you know, the whole group is such a good, like, your group is working as a machine so ridiculously well that you don't have to do peak damage. Then sure, you could probably drop a virtue and pick up a mitt because you're in tier 3 content and you need to be able to take at least some sort of hit. I am at the point with the raid set where I'm having an issue getting crit more than mastery. So even though wisdom seems like crazy good, like everything on there is stuff we would use, I've actually sometimes swapped in zeal, just because it's a little bit more crit. Might gives more crit than the wisdom of the will. So, but you're gonna need 5. Basically, honesty, wisdom, wit, confidence, determination. Agility is actually really good for RK. Obviously, the Fizz Mastery is a bit wasted. The Fizz Mastery is completely wasted, but agility is 2 crit, 2 mastery, and a finesse, so you actually get 5 DPS ratings out of 1 agility, whereas will is 3 mastery and 1 crit, so that's only 4. I still think will is overall better because you get the mitts, right? You get 1 tac mitt and 1 fizz mitt from it. But, you know, if you have to pick up some agility, that's by no means the end of the world. A lot of Rune-keepers are rocking this thick gold plate ring as their off-ring. I think this one's pretty much BIS. This is the quest reward one. But as your off-ring, this has agility and might and is honestly very, very good for RK. Okay, keep going. All right, I think we're finally to talking about rotation. So, here's the concept. I'm trying to think of how to best explain this. The way I see it, there are 2 different playstyles that you're going to have on DPS. Probably for any class, but specifically for RK. You could have what I do, which is more of a rigid, planned, mapped out rotation. And then you can have more of a dynamic one. I know Rune-keepers, or one in particular that actually does more damage than me. His gear is also better than me, but I think his rotation is going to be better. It is also going to be harder to execute. You have a more dynamic rotation where you're kind of feeling things out and just keeping everything off cooldown in a way that's intelligent. And you can still like cram in all your big stuff to when you have Aftershock and being able to do that. Doing that on the fly takes a lot more talent than I think I have. Okay, I feel like I'm getting old. I'm probably still fairly young as like an average of the population of people that play this game with how old this game is. But I feel like I'm getting older and my reflexes aren't that good. I just need things mapped out. So my approach is, how can I simplify this to still do a lot of damage and be very intelligent about it, but I always know what I'm doing next. There is no question in my mind, okay? So my rotation basically functions off the 15-second concept. So your biggest damage dealers by far, right, are Smoldering Wrath with Smoldering Red. So Smoldering Wrath channels for 2.5 seconds if you're at 9 attunement. It ticks 5 times. For each tier of Red of Fire you have, you add another 3 ticks. So 8 ticks in 2.5 seconds of very high damage. Smoldering Wrath and Smoldering Writ together outpaces everything else you're going to do, like, by far, okay? In the top 4 or 5 is basically these two, Essay of Fire, Epic Conclusion if you get 6 or so, and then for me it ends up being Ceaseless Argument, and if you have your rotation set up to where you are spamming the absolute crap out of Fiery Ridicule, then Fiery Ridicule as well. I didn't for the longest time. What I did as my approach, and in that video that you got, if anybody's seen the other video I posted where I did 197.5, I have very little Fiery Ridicule. If you have very little Fiery Ridicule, you can get away with not maxing out this trait. You can free up some trait points here because the amount of damage you're getting out of it is not super high. You're just kind of keeping the dot going, okay? But if you have your build, your rotation saturated with it, it does do a lot of damage, and I want to talk about that, I guess right now. Well, let me finish this 15-second concept first. So, Essay of Fire, 10-second cooldown, dot lasts 14 seconds. We can round that up to 15. It's a little inefficient in terms of there's a little bit of downtime for Essay, which is a huge damage dealer, and the top rune keepers are probably going to be like, yeah, I can't stomach that. Like, I need to make sure that that's constantly being hit, like, as often as I possibly can. And I get that. I don't judge people for having that feeling, but for the sake of simplicity, this is what I'm doing, okay? I'm rounding up that up 1 second to 15. Smoldering Wrath is at 12 seconds. It has 2.5 second channels, so that's 14.5 seconds. We're rounding that up half a second to 15. Epic Conclusion is 30, right? But if we hit it with closing remarks, it gets cut in half to 15. So, these are our big, heavy hitters. And we can basically think about it as 15-second rotation. Now, we have some stuff that's more than 15 seconds. The two biggest ones being Shocking Words and Scathing Mockery. Biggest ones in terms of contribution to our damage. So these we just hit every other 15 seconds. So that means we're going to have two different versions. It's sort of like a 30-second rotation with two 15-second halves, right? That's the general concept, okay? I need to acknowledge my rotation will not be the best ever. There will be people who can outdo it because they are skilled, they're talented gamers, and they can just be more dynamic in how they approach it, okay? All right, let's see, I covered that. Okay, so CA and FR animation time. Here is something that we need to talk about. When I first made my rotation, here I'm going to close out all these. I had the assumption, I tried to look up on the internet. Unfortunately, there's no information about LOTRO on the internet. I think all discussions happen in Discords or, you know, in voice, and they're like AI can't really search that to give you any information. So I just sort of came up with a rotation. I was building it out on my spreadsheet, and I just assumed, these are both fast skills, that they're about 2/3 of a second. I did 0.67 seconds for each, right? The reason I didn't take Essence of Flame for the longest time was I did the math, and I was like, I could do Ceaseless Argument, Fire Ridicule, Ceaseless Argument, and that, if I don't have the induction reduction for Essence of Flame active, does more damage. And even if I do, more damage per second to activate those three skills back to back versus to induct Essence of Flame. But then if I do have, it's what is it, Mystifying Flames? This one, Empowering Flame. If I do have this buff up, it's only slightly better. And so that was my reasoning originally, to just like not even use Essence of Flame. When I posted my rotation in a couple different Discords, my I'm not going to call him colleague, but my arcade friend who does more damage than me pushed back on my statement that Fire Ridicule I just do for the dot. He was like, you can get a lot of damage out of it. The reason, he said, is Fiery Ridicule has basically like no animation time. You can basically sneak it in anywhere. So then I went and I did a test, and I tried to determine their actual activation times. And now this is probably not perfect. It's really hard to test things in LOTRO because of server lag. Like sometimes you'll do a parse and you'll count how many skills you can get off, and then you'll do it again, and it'll be like a couple different. So it's very challenging to get exact, but from the best I could determine, Fiery Ridicule has probably like a 0.34 second activation time, whereas Ceaseless Argument has like a 1.12 second activation time. So you can literally get like 3 Fiery Ridicules off for every 1 Ceaseless Argument in terms of animation time, right? DPS. So when I realized that, you rerun the math, Essence of Flame is absolutely worth it. Fire skills, if you don't know, have this weird thing where, yes, they're an induction, but Rid of Fire, Fiery Ridicule, Essence of Flame, they all seem to have very minimal animations after the induction. So the vast majority of the time it takes to activate the skill is the induction. Literally, Rid of Fire, which is a 0.7 second induction, takes less time to activate and move on to the next skill than Ceaseless Argument. So that is why my rotation for the instant set, which is what you're going to see here on my bars, with this rotation I got 211,000 DPS with the instant set. Okay, no raid armor set. Now the instant set has way better stats, so I was able to cap both mastery and crit. I had my crit overcapped by a little bit at the time. You can't do that as easily with the raid set. I cannot cap both just yet. Once I've got better quality essences, I've mapped it out on my spreadsheet, and I will be able to, but I'm just not there yet. Okay, so all of the things with this rotation, okay? You're going to do your opener, whatever your opener is. For me, I do Essay of Fire, Shocking Words, Scathing Mockery, because I build 3 attunement, I dump, then I put Scathing Mockery as a fast cast on the other side of it so that I get 3 attunement from it instead of before Shocking Words. So I like this combo here. And then on this side, I will do, Essay of Fire, the fast cast Combustion, and then use Distracting Flame to get the equivalent 3 attunement. Now with this, you actually have extra 2 in here. You could move your Fiery Ridicule and Ceaseless Argument to this side to kind of buff your damage a little bit on your consumer. So let me talk about your consumers actually real quick. I have it here on the spreadsheet. So for me, I did a test to see how much damage is happening for each attunement on Shocking Words and Combustion. I had mistakenly once upon a time thought that it was very minimal for Shocking Words in like one test that I did, and what I realized, I think what had happened was I did it where when I had less attunement, I had the 5% incoming damage from Mystifying Flames, and then when I did it again with more attunement, I did not, and so I thought that the difference was just like non-existent. In reality, for Shocking Words at like tactical damage cap, right, it's about 10,000 damage per attunement on a crit. So for me, when I tested it, I was doing, I'm reading off my spreadsheet here, 267,688 was like 1 attunement. And then 9 attunement was 348,499. So it added up, going from 1 attunement to 9 attunement, so that's 8 additional attunement, was about 80,000. It was 80,800 damage. It's about 3.77% damage buff per. In this rotation, I don't worry about maxing it out. You probably could optimize it a little bit better, so feel free to mess with it, obviously. I'm saying feel free. You can do what you want. Combustion is actually a little bit worse. I thought Combustion was better, but it's actually worse. Combustion is only 9.8k damage, so 9,800 damage per attunement pip. Interestingly, Combustion hits harder than Shocking Words, but you will get more damage out of Shocking Words, most likely, because the way we have our rotation set up, it will be during Aftershock, which means the crit chance is a lot higher in Shocking Words, so you're going to have more crits with Shocking Words than Combustion. So, for those of you who maybe haven't watched my other videos, I will just do a sample rotation here with no buffs. So I do my opener, right? I'm just going to do SA, shocking, or sorry, just, I can't speak right now. Let me regather my thoughts here. SA, shocking words, scathing mockery, then I do distracting flame, and a quick fire ridicule just to get that dot going, then I get my writs up. Let me reset this combat thing so I can show you properly. As soon as combat drops, here we go. Okay, take 2. This is my opener. Alright, so now I'm in my rotation. I'm going to do just straight down the line. And I'm just trying to build writs and get lightning procs. And if that doesn't happen, I just skip epic conclusion and I just follow the next SA of fire segment and go back into smoldering wrath. Okay? That's all it is. Just, and then it's back to smoldering wrath. I'm getting very unlucky with procs. We got closing remarks. I am not going to rush into it. I will skip this first ceaseless argument since I don't need to leave that lightning in, but I still want to get 3. I did that in the wrong order. I'm talking too much. So, in that case, right, here's Aftershock. Here, I'll put an H pop up so you can see that. 20% damage, 25% crit chance, lasts 10 seconds. Okay, so, if I'm in this segment, right, top or bottom, either one of these, and I get closing remarks, I am not then trying to just like panic and hit epic conclusion as fast as possible. It lasts 20 seconds. You got time. You got time to practically go through your whole rotation since it's such a short rotation and still hit it. So you're just going to calmly go Smoldering Wrath, hit your Volcanic Runestone. If it's up, it's only going to be up every other, right? It's 30 seconds for this one, so every other time that'll be up. Skip the first ceaseless argument because we know that that takes like more than a whole second to get off, but then do basically all the other fire skills. This last section right here, you can actually tweak this, right? So we're gonna hit FR, Writ, Lightning, FR, Writ. That would put us at 2 writs. Then we hit Epic Conclusion with Aftershock up. Then we get our 3rd writ and we snapshot that fire, that Writ of Fire dot with the 20% buff from Aftershock, and then all of this stuff. So then we're going, you know, our SA, our Fast Cast Combustion, which is now also almost 20,000 higher because we did an extra 2 attunement before it. Then you just do all of these. Right as you finish Essence of Storm, Smoldering Wrath should be coming off cooldown, and then you hit that, okay? Now, if you have it set up right, okay, or if I remember correctly, I have it set up right, what you will have happen is if you don't always have, what was it called, this one? Empowering Flame. So if you don't have this buff up, SA of Fire will take longer to induct, it'll feel slower, and you'll barely get Essence of Storm off by the time you have like half a second left of this 10 seconds of Aftershock, right? To start your Smoldering Wrath. That is perfect. So what happens is with that 20% tactical damage buff, if you start Smoldering Wrath successfully, right, it applies to the whole channel duration, which means you've effectively extended this buff by another 2 seconds. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm screwing up because I don't finish Smoldering Wrath before this ends, right? It's by design that you're barely starting it before this ends. So let me try this again with a little bit less talking. I would just melee that and put myself in combat. Okay. Go away, go away, go away, go away. Go away. Let me bring out a new dummy because that won't last 3 minutes. So this is with no buffs. My DPS will not be great, okay? But let's just see the flow of stuff. You can probably change the opening as well if you don't love this. It's just kind of what I've gotten used to doing. Okay, we got that. first one, Smoldering Wrath, has a little bit of downtime. But it's okay. So when you have harsh bait up like this, you're still getting 15% tactical damage. So even though it's not as good as having Aftermath, or sorry, Aftershock, it's still really good. Okay, so right now we're gonna go boom, boom, boom. Do that. We're gonna sneak in that Rit. Okay, got close marks again, which is great. That. I think I messed up that order because my brain is trying to think about explaining things. So that's it. It's very easy. This is not the greatest thing. I have like no buffs and I'm in the 180s, right? I know some people are trying their best and they can't even break 160 currently. So this rotation should help a lot. I am not taking advantage of the raid sets really with this rotation. So now let's talk about if you have the raid set. Okay. I believe we are pretty much at the end of what I had. Let me check my sheet here of what I had planned. So that was that one. So here is the spec that I actually use in my current raid setup. Since I don't have Volcanic Runestone Tracery, I don't really worry about juicing that out fully on damage. In fact, I might be able to drop this trait point and pick up like 2% Physmed or something if I wanted. What you don't want to do, so when you have the raid set, let's look at this. Okay, you have Fire Ridicule can reach 4th tier, but it cannot be refreshed. So what that means is you just go tier 1, tier 2, 3, tier 4, and then it's going to go through the full 21 seconds, and then it's going to fall off. It does not tier down to tier 3, and you just have to apply that last tier again. I thought that's what it did. I don't know why I thought that's what it did. It does not do that. It completely disappears. If they have the tier 4 Fire Ridicule dot on the target, when you hit Essence of Flame, it does a little bit extra damage. It says bonus damage. It's something. It's not huge. And then removes your next induction. So it basically acts like SA of Fire. So the way you have it set up is you basically, instead of inducting SA of Fire, which is 1.8 seconds, you induct Essence of Flame, which is half the induction, and then you fast cast Este, and then fast cast your next big long induction fire skill, right? That's the idea. So, on the same concept that I was working on before, where it's like within 15 seconds, expand that to now, let's look at a 30-second window. Fire Ridicule lasts 21 seconds. So, if we can have like the first 9 seconds of the rotation be building to tier 4, and then it falls off over the last 21 seconds of our 30-second block, which is what this rotation is supposed to be, then that means when you're back to the top, channeling Smoldering Wrath, it's falling off, right? Or has fallen off, the last like tick of Fire Ridicule. Then you can just build it up again, and you don't have to track. It's just going to be consistent when it falls off. So, I have spent a lot of time arranging these skills to take advantage of, what is it called? Master of Connotation. Yep. To try and make sure everything is fast cast that I can possibly do. So in this rotation, the only skills that are inductions are literally going to be 2 Writs right here, your Essences of Flame, and Extracting Flame. That's it. You have 5 skills that you're hitting that are going to be actually inductions in a, I think it was like 37 button rotation across 30 seconds, which I think when I did the math, it's like 13.5% of everything you're doing is taking advantage of this skill induction tracery. Which is why a lot of people make the argument that once you have the raid set, you drop this and you pick up AoE damage. I understand that argument. I don't think it's a bad argument. I hate it. I've tried it. It just feels, it's still, even though it's only like a few skills that you're inducting, if you don't have the, what is it, the Empowering Flame 30% induction reduction, it still feels bad to induct these. So I still prefer this. Something you need to pay attention to, though, is don't take the AoE on Essence of Flame if you don't have that. Because putting 1 point into this, even, and making this hit 2 targets, now it has gone from a single target skill to an AoE skill. Which means that every single tracery you have that buffs single target damage, so attack damage, attack criticals, these no longer apply to your Essence of Flame if you put 1 point into here. So keep that in mind. You might want to have either a separate set of allies for AoE damage. I have not gotten to where I have the resources to do that yet. Or fully commit and drop your induction speed and just see if you feel like you like that. Unfortunately, the only skills you have that will take advantage of this, of damage, I mean, unless I'm wrong about the second part of combustion, this part here, I need to retest that, but I don't feel like spending the script right now. But the only things that are going to take advantage of that is your little 3-target Essence of Flame, ooh, scary, and your Essence of Winter, which, to be honest, when are you hitting that unless you're just on pulls and you don't have anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, and Scathing Mockery. I can't believe I forgot that. So yeah, Scathing Mockery up front will hit harder. So, you know, I mean, it's a 20-second cooldown. You're not exactly spamming that. And there's no point in inducting that, so you're only going to hit that every 30 seconds, right? Because, well, I mean, unless you decided to not fast cast combustion, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the benefit is minimal, right? Like, you will, even if you put like 1 point in here and you have that tracery, the tracery for single target is only 22% damage, whereas the AoE one is like 27.5%, so you are getting 5.5% more damage on Essence of Flame. Whatever. Okay, so now let's talk about this rotation, or let me demonstrate this one. Unfortunately, I was hoping that the raid set would just like massively increase my damage output. It has not. It has dramatically, so there was a huge DPS band before with just the instant set. If things went really poorly, I would do like 175k damage, right? And then it would go all the way up to like 192, 195, and I hadn't really been breaking the 200ks. Then I got to the point where I was breaking the 200ks when I made some tweaks to my rotation and everything, but I could still get into the 170s with a really unlucky stretch. With the raid set, the floor dramatically goes up, but the ceiling has not gone up like a lot. So now my band, instead of going from like 175 to like 190 something, or like barely over 200k very rarely, is now like 192k is my floor. And I very regularly am at like 205, 207, 208. I think the highest I've done so far, and again, I don't have the upgraded raid set, so the upgraded one is going to have 7.5% tactical damage instead of 5. It's going to have a little bit more stats. So that's a DPS bump, and then if you can get the crafted heraldries from the freaking featured instance that we are going to have to spam run over and over and over and over again, and get the 3% crit chance, like that'll be a damage bump. So with this rotation that I've made for the raid set, I've still only hit like 214k, which is maybe higher than some people, but my friend that I was telling you about is not even a stout axe, so he's not even cheating with all of the stats that they get and the, 3% fire damage, right? Stout axe is just Biss for RK, but he's an elf and he's still doing more damage. He has the upgraded set, he has the heraldries, so there's a gear discrepancy, but still, he's hit 240k. So, just so you know what's possible, right? You don't think that I'm crazy good with my 214. But alright, so for this, the opener is going to look different. Let me pull up my spreadsheet so that I can remind myself. I've been looking at too many other rotations. So my opener is not going to have any fiery ridicule in it, because we want to make sure that by the time we get to here, this is the 4th one here in the rotation. Okay, so with this, we will still just do essay. I like my shocking words, scathing, and then we're just going to do crit, lightning, crit, lightning, crit, smoldering. So now we're just going down. We got fast cast, boom, boom. Cool, we got our harsh debate, that's the most important one. Oh, we got closing remarks, okay. I did my 4th, so I went back to the epic conclusion, and then I just did Writ after it. So we're just keeping the same skill count, slightly different order. Okay, we got Aftershock for that. Oh, Harsh Debate's back up again already. That's lovely. And we got it again. So this is a nice opening. We got both our ECs. Got through that one a little bit slower than I'd like, but regardless. Okay, got it again. Wow, if I had buffs, that would probably be a really good part. So you can see, basically, this is just super fast in terms of the number of things. There we go, that was better. Smoldering Wrath came up cooldown right as I started to. Sometimes it's really just this empowering flame uptime that kind of determines how quickly you get through each setting, right? What am I at? 191, 192. So yeah, I mean that's like what I would consider my 4 fully buffed. I'm doing quite well for having basically 0 buffs out of it. In terms of like the scrolls and all that. Oh, focus 3%. So yeah, you basically just follow it. Now I'm a clicker. I know a lot of people will criticize me for that, and that's completely fair, right? If you are a clicker like me, you are not going to be able to do it's going to be a bigger struggle for you to have situational awareness in a fight versus the people who are like pure keybind only. Okay, well that dummy ran out of time. We did, I guess we were at like 196-ish DPS, right? Raid set definitely dramatically increases your floor. With this, I think this is a 30-second rotation. In theory, it might be a little bit longer depending on the empowering flame procs. But I have 12 Fire Ridicules in there. In a standard parse, by the end, I'm close. I'm in like the 60s of Fire Ridicule. So you can kind of see already the breakdown here, right? You're going to have Smoldering Wrath, Smoldering Writ, Epic Conclusion, Essay of Fire, Fire Ridicule, Ceaseless Argument. That is the vast majority of your damage output. Essence of Flame is pretty good. The Essence of Ridicule is way down here. That's the extra damage that it does from the raid set. So that's not really what's bumping your damage. What's bumping your damage is just the time saved not having to induct Essay of Fire, and Fire Ridicule has a 4th tier, so that's a little bit higher. So yeah, it's not like the craziest bump to get the raid set. That, I believe, is everything that I can think of to share with you about my thoughts. I'm always open to questions. I'm a giant nerd, so, you know, this is my favorite... this is my favorite class, so I love talking about Rune-keeper if I can help people. Yeah, that's that. Hopefully somebody somewhere gets something out of this. I'm not going to tell you that please like and subscribe because I'm not a video guy. I'm not making any money off of this. I just hope that somebody finds it helpful. Alright, cheers. Have a good one.